Hello, welcome to Sound and Fury Book Reviews. As usual, I'm Tina. Today I'm doing a book review of We Fear Not Men in the Woods by Gretchen McNeil. This is a book coming out September 9th, 2025. It's a horror from Daw. I received this arc from NetGalley in exchange for a fair review. A blend of eco and survival horror, We Fear Not Men in the Woods is enjoyable, but it's not super scary. What's it about? For fans of Midsommar, Katrina Ward and Sarah Gailey, this addictively readable modern horror novel unfolds like a movie with a climax you'll never see coming. When Jen Monroe hears her father's remains have been found, she returns home to disprove his death, only to find the forests of rural Washington are hiding unimaginable horrors. 7 years ago, Jen Monroe left behind her hometown of Barrow, Washington, after her father, a forest ranger passionate about protecting old trees from the aggressive logging business, vanished. She vowed never to return. Then she gets a text from her estranged mother. Her father's remains have been found. I feel like I'm repeating myself. It seems impossible to Jen, who has always believed her father was alive, and she returns home determined to find out what happened. When her ex-boyfriend suggests a camping trip in the woods in her father's memory, it feels like the opportunity Jen has been hoping for, to find her father, to find the truth. But what she finds in the ancient, impermeable forest may be deeper, darker, and deadlier than she could have imagined, and it has no intention of letting her leave. To clarify, no, this book is not based on that recent meme about whether a woman would choose to be alone in the woods with a man or a bear lurking about. In this, other things are lurking. This is an easy-to-digest horror book. It's not super memorable, but I really enjoyed it, actually. The characters are on the younger side, and they are somewhat unlikable, which is fine, really, because when they start to die off, you aren't, super beat up about it. Jen isn't my favorite character of the year, but her decisions made sense, aside from one thing at the end that seemed a bit over the top, but at the same time, I kind of get it. And her narrative voice is entertaining. One character I did find actually very annoying, like her best friend, but that seemed kind of deliberate. Everyone else did kind of blend together though, but they were mainly cannon fodder, so I didn't really care. Their dialogue I could have maybe used a little bit less of because I didn't really care about their social dynamics, but I wouldn't say that I was bored or that I found that it was like I couldn't read it. I was just like, okay, it's fine. Now, Jen's narrative voice is not for everyone. She's acerbic and bitter and very, very judgmental of others. Yet this almost makes her sort of funny, and her bitterness has a reason for existing. She has a distant, passive-aggressive mother, a relatively recently dead father, and her high school boyfriend treated her like crap when her dad passed away, and now she has to deal with him again. And because she has daddy issues, she's sleeping with her professor. This manifests into her own passive-aggressive comments about people and also gives her a sort of deadpan tone at times. To be honest, she annoyed me a bit, but the first person in this case was at least engaging, and I kind of understood her deal. I understood why she was kind of unlikable. It's because she's has a chip on her shoulder. The thing is, it didn't really help with the tension because she didn't seem to really care about anyone. So when the dying starts, she's not super concerned. So I wasn't super concerned. The descriptions of the woods, though, were absolutely lovely. And one thing I thought was excellent was how Jen is a scientist of the woods. I can't remember exactly what she's a scientist of. So as she is able to look at things normal people would and see why it's out of place or wrong. Like, I could walk through the woods and see a bunch of pine needles on the ground and not even think about it, where she's like, oh, this doesn't make sense because blah, 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 the time of year. I thought that was really interesting. And I just thought that was those really nice details to have in the book. And this also helped to add to the creepy factor, and it grounded the book in reality in a way. I also really loved the focus on the logging company being the bad guys and the comments here and there about the environment. I'm very much an environmentalist. I am an environmentalist. So for me, those aspects I really liked. Now, and no, I'm not making this up to sound smart, but I did see the end coming, despite what the tagline would argue. At 37%, I knew for certain a certain specific twist, and even the big reveal was more of a pleasant, oh cool, than a shock for me. I will explain. It is a major spoiler, so jump to here to skip. I do have more to talk about this book, so this is just a little, few minutes here. Okay, so it was super obvious to me that Sammy was a monster in human guise. I suspected even before they got going, but at 37%, they're entering the woods and she's not wearing any shoes, and I made a note saying she's some sort of forest nymph. I was not far off. Now, the reason the Holder didn't surprise me was because I had encountered them before in this book, Perils of Sea and Sky, which if you like fantasy is really great. There's a flying galleon, 1700 ships, but they fly, and there's sky pirates and a whole bunch of Holder, and a hot demon dude, and there's a hard-ass woman ship captain. Anyway, because I had encountered that mythological creature from Scandinavian myths in this book, I was like, oh, Hulder, fun, cool. And it made sense because she was from Finland, and I was like, oh, cool, this is great. So moving on. Now, this book is an easy read, but it had some issues. It takes a while to get going, and there's a section near the end with a notebook that is just kind of like a secondary similar story that I didn't think we needed the whole thing for. It added kind of nothing, and it kind of took away from the tension of the current situation. The biggest problem with the book for me was that it isn't very scary. The most I can give it is a creepy, and then there's a bit of body horror in the last 15%. A lot of the first half is explanation for the climax. Like, Jen has to have a pretty strong reason for her choices in the last 2%. And while I think the book laid them out well, I think that it actually did a good job making it so I wasn't like, that's out of character. It just spent a bit too long on them. The book has a lot of backstory before the team even gets to the woods. And while I thought the route that the book took to do this, to introduce the characters by Jen comparing them who they are now to who she knew back in high school, I thought that worked well because it avoided kind of info dumps and stuff. It just took a long time, especially given none of the characters were particularly likable. You're this ex-boyfriend seems shady. He seems nice at times, but you don't trust him. And then the best friend is really annoying. And then you have these 3 other random men that kind of blend together. And then you have Sammy, who is kind of weird. I don't know. There were a couple good creepy parts, though. I really liked kind of the body horror that we got. I thought was really cool. I wasn't chewing my nails off through any of it, but I think this is a really good horror book for people who aren't super into horror or want to get into it, but are kind of nervous about being too scared. I also really love books about the woods, so that might have elevated this a lot for me too. The Pacific Northwest was featured here. I've never been there. It's on my list when Mr. Dump is gone, if that ever happens. I've been to I'd say a good 3/4 of the American states, but I have not been to that particular quadrant. I've never been to Idaho. I've never been to Washington. I've never been in that kind of area. So it's kind of cool to read a book set there because it makes me want to go there. Anyway, thank you to NetGalley and the publisher for the e-arc. It was a good book. I don't know. It was good. I liked it. Thanks.